I already knew. That's the part no one believes when I tell it. They want there to be a moment of shock. Some scene where I drop something, where my hands shake, where I have to sit down. But I'd been watching my sister for 6 years by then. I knew the shape of what she did before she did it. 3 days before my 31st birthday, I was looking for a pen in the kitchen drawer. I found an envelope instead. My name on the outside, a bank I'd never opened an account with, a balance of $45, 1,000 with my signature at the bottom of the originating document, dated 2 years ago. On a Tuesday I'd spent at work, I stood at the counter for a long time, not because I was stunned, because I was calculating. The birthday thing started when I was 24. My parents had planned a dinner. Nothing large, just family, a restaurant my mother liked. My sister called that afternoon with chest pains. Turned out to be anxiety. But the dinner was canceled, and I told myself that was just how it went sometimes. At 26, they'd rented a small hall. 30 people. My sister had a fight with her boyfriend the morning of, and spent 4 hours crying in my parents' bedroom, while my mother sat with her, and my father quietly called the venue to cancel. 28. Flight booked. Weekend trip, just me and my parents. My sister showed up at their house the night before with her kids, and no explanation and nowhere else to go. Each time, my parents looked at me the way people look at someone they're hoping will be reasonable. And I was. I always was. I said it was fine. I meant it, mostly. I understood, mostly. What I didn't understand was that I had a price I wasn't aware I was paying. I photographed every page of the bank documents on my phone before I put them back. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and pulled up every financial record I could access. Accounts I did know about, tax filings, the small business my parents had run for 11 years before closing it quietly in a way they never fully explained. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for the shape of things. It took about 2 hours to find it. The $45,000 wasn't alone. There were two other accounts I hadn't known about. Smaller, older. My name had been useful, apparently. I had good credit. I had always paid my bills. I had been, without knowing it, an asset. I thought about calling someone. A friend. My cousin who lives out of state. Instead, I made coffee and kept reading. My sister would call in the morning, I was nearly certain. She'd have something. A health scare. A crisis with one of the kids. A fight that had escalated. My parents would call me next, their voices careful, explaining that this year wasn't a good time, that maybe we'd do something small next month. I would say, of course. I would mean it a little less than last time. That was the script. I had been reading it for 6 years. What I did instead was pack. Not frantically. I made a list, which I realize sounds strange, but it's how I work when I'm trying not to feel something I'm not ready to feel yet. 1 bag of clothes. My documents. Passport, social security card, the folder where I keep things that matter. My laptop. 3 books I hadn't finished. The plant on my windowsill that I'd kept alive for 4 years. I left the copies of the bank documents on the kitchen counter, weighted down with a coffee mug. I had already emailed the originals to myself, and to the email address I'd created specifically for this, 3 days earlier, when I first started to suspect there was something in that envelope worth suspecting. I didn't leave a note. I thought about it. I couldn't find anything to say that the documents didn't already say more clearly. I drove to a motel 40 minutes outside the city. Not dramatic, just far enough that showing up unannounced would require a decision, not just a car. I slept better than I expected to. In the morning there were 11 messages. My sister twice, my mother 4 times, my father once, which meant it was serious. 3 from a number I didn't recognize. 1 from my mother again. I didn't open them. I knew what they said. I had heard versions of those messages. The hurt, the confusion, the gentle implication that I was being dramatic, that I was making things harder than they needed to be, my entire adult life. They didn't need me to read them to exist. They would exist regardless. What I did instead was call the bank. I explained that I had documentation suggesting my signature had been forged on an account origination form. I used words like fraudulent authorization and identity misuse and dispute filing. The representative was professional. She told me what I needed to send. I already had it. I want to be clear. I didn't do this to punish anyone. I did it because it was accurate, because my name was on something I didn't sign, attached to a debt I didn't know about, and that was simply, factually, legally, practically, not something I was willing to absorb anymore. There's a grief in this that I'm still figuring out how to hold, not the grief of a dramatic falling out. The quieter kind. The grief of realizing that a relationship you thought was one thing was actually a different, smaller thing, and that you participated in that misunderstanding for years because it was easier than seeing it clearly. I don't know if my sister knew what my parents were doing. I don't know if she knew my name was on anything. I genuinely don't know. I used to think I knew my family well enough to make that call, but I've reconsidered my confidence in that. I don't know if I'll speak to them again. I'm not ready to make that a permanent decision yet. Some days I think about my mother's voice. Not the careful voice, but the earlier one from when I was small, and I feel something that doesn't have a clean name. But I know this. The birthday will happen this year. It already did, in a way. I spent it in a motel room with bad coffee, and a plant on the windowsill and my phone face down on the bed, and it was the first one in years where nothing was canceled, and nothing was taken, and I didn't have to tell anyone it was fine. It was fine. For the first time I actually meant it.